Hey, how's it going, Rich?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Dux. Very well indeed. Very well indeed.
Well, great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. And boy, we're really excited to share this whole question that people ask us every single day. We got Teams, we got Office 365 groups, SharePoint, Yammer. What should I use when? And you mentioned, Rich, you got a sunny day. I think the world has flipped because I'm here in New York City. I look out the window. It's all gray and rainy and cold. I got your weather, man.
Hey, yeah, you should be over here, Dux. We got beautiful 25 degrees. We're all we're not used to it over here, but it's certainly nice.
Awesome. So again, thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon, and just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page, and I want to really showcase what we're going to talk about and walk through in this session. You know, with Microsoft releasing a lot of great workloads and a lot of great technologies, the common question people ask is, okay, what do I use when? How do I use these things in what scenario? So what we're going to do is first talk about the reality of collaboration today, how the world has changed, and why it's important for us to understand the context before we jump into all these technologies. And then Rich will talk about these modern tools and how it meets the different needs of different business scenarios and different user groups. And then third, we'll quickly jump into the different technologies we're going to look at, but more importantly, show some demos and use cases on when these tools are relevant to the business needs you're supporting. So just to get going here, you know, today the world has changed, right? The way technology is evolving are changing how we work. I mean, if I ask you, Rich, these days, first thing in the morning when you wake up, what do you do?
Grab my phone, probably take a look at my emails. You know, I work in our UK office, but I'm part of a global team here at AvePoint. My line manager's based over in the US, so, you know, see what's happened overnight, see what's going on before I've even left the office or had breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much I'm the same thing. I look at my emails on my phone. I may not respond to everything, you know, read, unread, delete some junk mail. And then while I wait for my ride, I continue my email. And then when I go to work, I pick up my email from my work, from my laptop. But then at the same time, when I'm doing my commute, I scroll through the latest news, look at my news feeds. So all these technologies are changing how we work and how we interact and communicate and collaborate. Now, the other reality in the world we live in is that because of technology, we, can you move the slide, please? There you go. Because of technology, we're more empowered to work remotely. And working remotely obviously has a lot of benefits to people spread geographically, but we've seen a great increase on remote working because technology has empowered people to do so. The other benefit of it, we're seeing a lot of organizations downsizing their physical space. From a cost savings perspective, technology has allowed for that because people are able to work remotely, and it doesn't matter now where you are, where you live, as long as you have access to technology, it can be done. So collaboration today has shifted, and boy, it's, if you look at how fast it's evolved, it's just in a short period of time. Now, the other reality we live in is information is more widely available. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this statistic. You know, 90% of the world's data was generated over the last 2 years. And I can think of Moore's Law. They're talking about it will expedite and exponentially increase in the years to come because of technology and because of our access to information. Information is continuously being generated. But as a result, which is on the flip side, and we all know this, information is widely available and it's being shared more freely. These stats are actually very alarming, and I'm sure it's no surprise to you. 87% of senior managers regularly upload work files to a personal email or cloud account. And I'm sure this is not being malicious. I mean, we just need to get work done. While we may have all the fancy and great tools internally, we may not have you know, the right technologies to work with our customers. So what do? We use either email attachments, or we rely on a lot of the external public sharing tools. And the scariest part of this, check this out, 58% have accidentally sent the wrong person sensitive information. So I'm sure, Rich, working with a lot of customers in UK and maybe broader Europe, I'm sure this conversation pops up all the time, correct?
Yeah, exactly, Dux. I mean, I was with a customer yesterday. We were talking about kind of some of the things they want to want to chat about, and the service delivery manager pops up and says, "You know what, guys? I was chatting to our exec team yesterday, and they admitted that all of the exec board papers are shared via Dropbox. I mean, you know, they just shared this information with me. So yeah, I mean, perfect example, Dux."
Yeah, I had another customer I was working with, and this is actually scary. So this is a customer out in California, and they believe in bring your own device, bring your own tools, as long as you can get the job done, go for it. Until a few months ago, so one of their top sales individual regularly uses Box or Dropbox to share proposals, presentation with customers, and information about the business, which is fine. And we all know that when people use Box or Dropbox or Google Drive, what have you, they use their personal accounts. Well, it so happens that this sales individual got hired by the competitor. And guess what? Even though this individual didn't have access to his company and corporate accounts, he still kept his personal Box or Dropbox. And all the information about his previous employer, which is a competitor of his new employer, is accessible now by the new employer. Now, there's no proof, but this customer, the previous employer, was talking to me. They're pretty sure a lot of the internal IP, a lot of NDA stuff was made available to the new employer. So that is really, really scary, right? And we're in this big conundrum where, we want to use technology, we want to share information to get the job done, to make people be more effective, but at the same time, we walk this fine balance of how do we secure our crown jewels? How do we secure corporate artifacts that we don't stifle empowerment?
Hey, Dux, just jumping in there, I've just noticed there's a really great comment from I think it's Tony in the chat window saying that, with GDPR coming into force in, I believe it's 1 year today, he's seeing, even more issues around this at the moment. So I just wanted to throw that piece in as well.
And as you can see, technology companies like Microsoft or even ourselves, we're prepared. We're ready to help support customers, and there's a lot of messaging now on GDPR. The key is, in the past, a lot of GDPR conversation obviously is around what it's about, but now we got to roll up our sleeves and really look at how technology can help facilitate and support this regulation compliance. And then the other reality in the workplace today is, millennials will compromise 50% of the U.S. workforce by 2020. Now, I know a lot of you may look at this and say, yeah, what's the big deal? I mean, that's real world. But what the big deal is, the way millennials think, the way millennials work are very different than previous generations. I mean, case in point, right? Technology to millennials is a part of their life, whereas there's still a generation where they look at technology, it's a tool. And in this whole generation is coming in, and it's coming in quick. So how do we support and make sure that they can work better, they can work faster with modern tools and technologies to help them meet their needs? I mean, how we work has changed, right? Today, when we talk about work, it's not just going to office, clocking in, sitting in the desk. Work is anywhere, everywhere, and with anything, right? And then we work really now with teams. If I ask anybody in this webinar who's working on a project, obviously we're all working on a project. But then my day job, I'm not a project manager. I'm not, I'm not in a project delivery organization. I'm in marketing. I'm in sales. But I'm working on a project, and I work with different people in my company and different people outside of my company. So today, again, the reality is we have a lot of technologies. Data's all over the place. We also have to be cognizant of how we secure data, especially with looming regulations like GDPR. The mindset, because of the new generation, is different. And then we work collaboratively more than ever, cross-culturally and cross-globally, which leads us to the question, how do we maximize the tools we have? So, Richard, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying there, Dux. I think one of the important things really to think about is that different people have different needs. There's no such thing as kind of like, one tool that does every single job. It's not a case of like saying, hey, email, that's the tool for every single thing that I can do. And I think some of the challenges that, when I'm speaking to customers about is what we've got up on screen here. One of the most difficult things people tell me is it's hard moving between, hey, one tool and another tool. So I've got some great content on my intranet. I want to send that to one of my prospects, but my email doesn't talk very well to my intranet, doesn't talk very well to my CRM system. So that kind of like siloed friction moving between application 1 and application 2, that's something that I hear kind of all of the time. And then, it just wastes time with people switching between, tool 1, tool 2, tool 3. We want to make it quick for people. But I think, shadow IT as well is something that, we're kind of hearing about all the time now, where the business is kind of like, well, if you can't provide me with what I want, I'm just going to go and do it myself. I've got a credit card. I'm going to go online. I'm going to sign up to a cloud service. I'm going to start using it. So if you make it hard for me to, to share files externally, I'm going to sign up with a service and do that. If you don't make it easy for me to have like chat-based workspace, I'm going to sign up to something like Slack and do that. So yeah, these are the sorts of things I hear all the time.
Yeah, and Richard, I mean, all these things are going on today, right? But the problem is, like you highlighted, is we've got all these bespoke solutions. Yeah. And like you said, different people have different needs and different tools that they like. Now it's a big headache for the organization, a big headache for IT. And I find this very fascinating. So friends, this is an actual research done by Avanade, and I'll tweet out the link in a second here. And by the way, we'll share all the research as well as a part of this webinar, as a part of the resources. But I find this very, very fascinating, and it's true, right? So, I mean, if you look at, I'm sure in your companies, we don't have to name names. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand how old you are, but think about this. If you're in the baby boomer generation, everybody loves in-person meeting, email, check that out, right? But then, so Rich, which one do you identify with? You don't have to divulge your age, but which one do you?
That's generous, Dex. That's generous. For me, I think, I definitely see myself more on the right of this chart. I think some of the interesting things is look at the in-person meeting one. How, we've gone from, baby boomer generation loving in-person meetings, Generation X and millennials becoming, less keen on that. But then you see Generation Z, we're seeing, going back to sort of wanting more in-person meetings. I think that's quite an interesting one for me to see that.
Yeah, I find like, I don't know, maybe I work in technology while, I'm 41 years old, and I'm not shy to admit that. I look at this and I relate more to Generation Z, right, where face-to-face is important to me, virtual online meeting, and I know my colleagues here at AvePoint sometimes look at me weird. Every time I do an online meeting internally, I turn on my video. To me, being able to see and communicate and look at facial expressions is very important to me.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that leads to the question now, right, with all these different needs and different tools out there and different preferences, how does Microsoft look at it? Rich?
And I think really, yeah, this leads us nicely onto the whole kind of Office 365 groups piece, Dax. And I think when I speak to customers, there's a bit of confusion really about, what is an Office 365 group? I don't quite understand the difference between a team and an Office 365 group. I'm not quite sure I get, when to use Yammer. And I think this chart here kind of sums it up nicely. Really, an Office 365 group for me is like, it's the glue. It's the way of tying all of the people together. It's the way of tying like a membership of people. So, hey, I'm working on a new project launch. Let's create a group for that. But as part of that launch, we're going to need to use mail. We're probably going to have to store some documents, which, hey, works well in SharePoint. Probably going to have some meetings. We may need to, have, co-op or some content. So I think this slide here kind of shows it nicely. And, Dux, you did a webinar with one of the product team from Microsoft a few weeks back. And I think, this was the message that he was really trying to get out to market. The groups really is that glue. It's that membership piece that ties everything together.
Yeah, and I think if we really break this down, right? So earlier you talked about a slide where people have different needs. And a lot of these tools that we see on the slide is familiar to everybody. You know, obviously Outlook is mail and calendar. We get it. Outlook Exchange, right? SharePoint, it's been around 15 years. Site content. Skype, it's IM. Pro Plus, it's essentially Office on the desktop. Yammer, Enterprise Social, and Teams, a chat-based workspace. But you know, customers always ask me, so how is Teams different than Groups? So think of Groups as the keychain. Groups is the keychain that holds everything together. As Rich mentioned, if you create a group, all of the ancillary, I can't pronounce it, but related technologies are all tied together. And then, you know, once you create a group, some of the core collaboration communication pieces gets created as well, right? Like a SharePoint site, you know, like a OneNote notebook. And then if you want to, you know, turn on Teams as well, you can tie it to the group. So we'll talk more about that, friends. But it's important, at least for this slide, to realize that number one, Microsoft has all the tools that would fit all the different needs for the different generations. But number two, to address it, each tool being siloed, Microsoft created groups to be that keychain, to be the glue to hold everything together. And the one thing that I really, really love about this is Microsoft also realized the value of security and compliance. You see, as IT, right, we can't stop our business from going and wanting and using these tools. Well, guess what? Microsoft will offer these tools and empower the business, but at the same time as IT, we can still secure and protect and ensure we comply with whatever standards that we need to comply with, such as GDPR. And I think this is the most powerful aspect of the platform. And last point, as Microsoft continues to introduce these technologies and workloads, you don't have to pay extra, right? From a cost perspective, you know, you don't have to pay extra money for a chat-based workspace like Slack, or you don't have to pay extra for, you know, file sharing technology like OneDrive, right? So it's all part of the single platform. Is this slide? Yeah, so Rich, maybe you want to highlight some of the core offerings in Office 365?
Yeah, so I think it's always good, you know, just to consider, you know, what these core offerings are and kind of, you know, what people are getting here. So that's why we put this slide together. You know, Dax has already mentioned Exchange. You know, giving us our mail and calendar. You know, really important to certain generations. But you know, I think over time, you know, email is not going to die. You know, I think there's lots of blog posts you can read. People talking about email that's going to die. It's not there. But you know, when these millennials join the workplace, we're going to maybe see, you know, less and less demand in this particular space there. Obviously, we've got our OneDrive for Business and our SharePoint, and you know, there was the SharePoint Summit just a week or so ago with some fantastic improvements coming down the road for SharePoint Online in the coming months. I think we're going to really see that piece grow. You know, the sync app, something that maybe, you know, SharePoint in the past there was maybe some, you know, negative words around, let's say. You know, if anyone saw Build and this whole files on demand thing a few weeks back, you'll see that is really being taken forward at a really big rate.
That's phenomenal. Files on demand, and even a lot of the new capabilities that was shown at SharePoint Summit last week. So yeah, let's just say SharePoint is not your granddad SharePoint anymore.
Exactly. And if anyone, you know, didn't get a chance to see SharePoint Summit, Dux did a fantastic video with Jeff Teeper. Sorry, not with Jeff Teeper. He did a fantastic video with Dan Holm, you know, discussing the SharePoint Summit, driving around Redmond, sort of discussing what happened here. So if you want to catch up, you want to get that quickly, we'll tweet out a link to Dux's video on the SharePoint Summit. Yeah, modern collaboration. Yeah, sorry, go for Dux.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, so this kind of sums up, like, at least some of the key capabilities that people get in Office 365. But as we know, Microsoft continues to innovate, continues to introduce new workloads, just like recently Staff Hub was released. So expect that, you know, a lot of these technologies will come out. And again, the intent is not to throw more balls in the air, but really to provide the right tools for the right needs for the right groups.
Exactly.
Now, if we look at all this, right, so we talked about what's going on in the world today, how collaboration is changing, the workforce that we work with, what modern tools are out there and what Office 365 provides. Now let's jump into the meat of this conversation. What to use when, okay? So the way I would think about it and the way I would advise folks is, first and foremost, it comes back to the business. Microsoft provides all these phenomenal tools, and being in IT in the last 20 years, a big lesson I learned is I can't just throw these tools out and expect magic to happen. And that's, I think, the issue that we deal with today. We throw all these wonderful tools out. Hey, business, we've got Office 365, we've got Teams, we've got Yammer, we've got SharePoint. Go find a problem. Well, we can figure it out as IT. For the business, this is not their day job. The business, every single day, all they care about is how do I get my work done faster, better, sooner, and go home at 5 o'clock. And our job is to equip them by pretty much tying in what these technologies can do that relates to their business scenario. So why do we need to do this, right? What do you talk about? I mean, what do you mean by identifying business scenarios? And I'm not talking about big stuff. I'm not talking about, doing a whole business process re-engineering, but really it's key to identify and define your business scenario on how Office 365 can help. And how do you do this, right? Start with the low-hanging fruit. Meet with the key people in your organization, be it decision makers, folks in HR, project managers, and really the idea is you look at their day-to-day pain points and tie it to what the tool can offer and what the tool provides. And define clear business scenarios of which you can effectively measure success and realize tangible results. A great way to do this, Microsoft, as a part of Fast Track, created this thing called Productivity Library. So Chris, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, Rich, if you don't mind showing it. And I think Microsoft did a phenomenal job in helping you and providing you a tool to take a business scenario and a department and then show you what tool. So for example, if we pick an industry, right? So maybe, I don't know, just pick an industry, Rich.
Let's go with retail.
Yeah, retail, right? So you pick retail. And then notice that if you pick an industry, it will filter. And you can pick a role, say sales, right? And we'll leave it at that. And then just say show results. So the cool thing is it shows you, number one, where it says basics. These are just some of the common things that people do regardless of your department. But let's look at inaction. What inaction says is, based on your industry, based on your role, this is a business scenario. Know how customers feel about company products. If you click on it, it will drill down and show you, it will show you the business process. Okay, in this scenario, you want to communicate with sales staff in order to understand how customers are reacting to products as they shop. Okay, number one, communicate directly with customers. So if you click on that, expand on that, it shows you what technology, what tool you can use. In this case, Yammer is suggested. Number two, if you want to gain insights from internal experts, if you expand that, it will show you Skype, right? So point being is, having a tool like this or using this way of interacting with the business, talk about their business need, and then you map what tool that can help them, is allowing you to define the business scenario much more effectively versus, we could go back to the slide now, versus going back to the business and say, how do you like your Office 365? Do you want some SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams? Do you want to supersize it? Let's throw in some Power BI. Next. That model just doesn't work anymore. So identifying business scenario is important. So if we think about business scenario, right? Next slide, please. It's also important that as we define it, so let's go back to the previous slide, Rich. We consider this to drive the conversation when you identify these scenarios. Like, what are your pain points? And again, the pain points doesn't have to be really big. It could be, it's just so hard to collaborate in the project or manage a meeting, right? Or areas that you can improve. So you take the challenge and then you show them what the possibilities are. These technologies can fill in the gap. And at the end of the day, people just want to know, can I do this easier, faster, better, and get my job done in a much more effective way? Now, if you look at the next slide, we talk about who needs to be involved in this conversation. Obviously, the decision maker in that department or executives, IT, and keep in mind the people in IT that's talking to the business should know the technology code. They don't have to be a developer, but whoever's engaged in this conversation trying to bridge the gap should be able to quickly think, oh, they have a need around this, Yammer is perfect for that. For this, SharePoint's perfect for that, right? So, and have some of these key people involved in the conversation. So if we look at the next slide as an example, right? So if we tie all these together, if you want to form your own business scenario and tie what technology, so consider this framework. So when you talk to the business, you can say, you know, as someone in sales, as someone in marketing, as someone in sales management, I want to blank. I want to have a single version of the proposal that everyone can access and edit rather than emailing it all over the place. Then this is where you help them, right? Using a SharePoint site or a OneDrive library to share and store a single version and can edit together using co-authoring. I'll know this is successful when my sales team can create proposals more easily and therefore have more time to close deals. Now, this last part, friends, is very important. We need an effective way to measure to see if it's successful. Just by saying, oh, we're going to use SharePoint to better collaborate doesn't mean jack squat, right? So having this framework is key. And I know, Rich, you have another example in the next slide. And maybe you want to walk through that to give another flavor of this model.
Yeah, exactly, Jack. So in this example here, we're going to say that, hey, you know, as someone in marketing, what I really want to deliver is kind of virtual conferences to make sure my field salespeople are up to date on the most recent campaigns. So maybe this is something that today, oh, sorry, Dux, I think you've clicked on the slide there. Maybe this is something today that, you know, I'm doing via email or something, but you know what? I want to do, you know, virtual conferences. So I'm going to suggest that we maybe use Skype for Business for voice and video. You know, Dux mentioned about how, you know, he sees video as a really important thing, and I can absolutely say every Skype call with Dux is always a video call. I'm going to use SharePoint to share the meeting files and Yammer for post-meeting discussion. So this is where you can use the productivity library maybe to get some of these examples. And obviously, as Dux said, most important thing is we need that measure at the end. So the measure at the end of this one is that, you know, my field sales employees are receiving more updates in a timely manner. So it's not just we communicate better, it's they're getting more updates and they're getting in a timely measure. So we can actually look at that and we can define success at the end of it.
Yes, so now, right, if we put this, again, further, one of the reality too is as you start working with a business, I went one slide too many here. You know, I highly encourage everybody, you don't boil the ocean. Rich, do you mind going back to the previous slide?
Yeah, sure.
I think I clicked too much. You don't boil the ocean, right? Start small, keep it simple. Look at some of the business use cases from, you know, improving meetings or improving project coordination. Keep it simple to avoid overwhelming people. Go after low-hanging fruits, and here's the reality too. Once you start engaging with a business, guess what? Everybody wants everything for nothing yesterday. Again, everybody wants everything for nothing yesterday. Tweet that, right? So the next step is you should be able to prioritize the business needs. Which master do you want to serve? Because IT, you don't have endless resources to support everybody. So here's a simple way to plot your business scenario. What you're looking for is what's the best bang for your buck. So from my perspective, always you want to go with high impact and low difficulty, right? So by getting everybody's business needs and looking at what everybody wants, I plot it and look at IM is huge. So I'm going to go after that. HR policy review workflow, medium difficulty but doable because it's high visibility HR, go for it. So you plot it this way and maybe come into some kind of agreement or standard to say we're only going to do all the greens. Yellow is phase 2, red is phase 3. And again, keep decision makers in the loop about this. And once you have this model of prioritization, you can take this now and decide what tool to use. Now, speaking of tools, right? As you've seen and based on our conversation, your business scenario based on the low-hanging fruits you want to go after, the priorities you want to start with. You can take this and plot out your communication collaboration journey. And this will tell you what should you use when. So for example, let me pick a business scenario, and we'll do a quick demo after this. Let's say one of the business scenarios is to improve project collaboration, right? So as you work through the journey of project collaboration, communication, and improve collaboration, we first start with ideation in Yammer, for example, right? Hey, we're working on a project. We just got this business. Who has past experiences? So once you get some input, you formalize the project. You create a project site in SharePoint. And all the going back and forth around the project can happen in Microsoft Teams, for example. And then for more one-off, one-to-one, maybe external SMEs, you can email back and forth. And then as you present to the business or customers, you use Skype for Business. And then once the project is done, you keep all the project artifacts in your SharePoint site. But this right here is critical, and it's important to think about what you should use when, because once you walk through this process with the business and talk to them and show them how to use the technology in this fashion, they would gain a good sense of appreciation. And I don't know about you, Rich, but when I come to work every single day, I don't just use one tool. I use a collection of technologies depending on what I'm doing, during that day or during that time.
Yeah, absolutely, Dux. I totally agree with you, and I think what we're going to do to highlight that point there is, as Dux promised, we're going to jump into a demonstration. So yeah, this is going to be my collaboration journey on a day-to-day basis, maybe just showing you how it works and how I jump between these different tools, but also how well these different tools talk together these days. And I think that's one of the points that Dux was mentioning earlier. So I'm just going to flip over to the demonstration 1 second. Just switch screens there. So here we go then. The first thing I probably do in the morning is, I go and look at my emails in Outlook, as we said earlier with Dux. And I can see here, I've had an email from Deborah, so I'm going to have a little look at this. It's an email from Deb. She's saying, hey, Rich, she's taken a call from me last night. She's asking if AvePoint can help this customer with a migration of a legacy product they're using to Office 365. She's telling me that she's created a lead for me in Dynamics, and she said, hey, can I have a look at this? So straight away, I've picked up some work here, and I'm going to take it forwards. Just to check, can everyone see my screen at the moment? It's telling me that people gone. Yeah, you got it done. Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
Cool. Awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful. So first thing I'm going to do then is I've got this question here. I'm going to jump over to Yammer. One of the things I find is that Yammer is really great for me just sort of getting my message out there, me asking colleagues for sort of different questions, and kind of getting ideas on this. So first thing we do is I'm going to jump into Yammer and put, hey guys, I have a customer who is interested in seeing migration of IBM connections to Office 365. Can we help? Because I'm not sure. And Yammer's a great way for sort of getting that message out there. So I'm just going to post that message and take it forward.
And Rich, honestly, I mean, at least for our internal Yammer environment, boy, I see this every single time. Questions too, because being a global business, I'm sure we have colleagues that may have done something like this in another part of the world. Why reinvent the wheel, right?
Exactly. And one of the things that I find really helpful with Yammer is, if I think someone might be able to help me, I might just chuck their name in. So for example, I know that Dux knows loads of different people and loads of different ideas about what we've done in the past. So I might just chuck Dux's name in there. Then I know that he's going to get a message. This is going to bubble up to the top of Dux's feed, and I'm probably going to get a response from Dux on what to do. So yeah, this is a great example.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I just got the alert. So
yeah,
so like what Rich says, yeah, there you go. Hey man, I have worked on a similar project. Call me. There you go.
So next time I come in, I'm going to jump in, and I can see there's a number 1 up here. I've got a little notification. It's going to reload, and I'm going to have Dux's answer pop right up on screen here. But what I might do, there we go. Hey man, I've worked on a similar product. Why don't you call me? But the next thing I might want to do is I might want to ask a question to my team. So I've thrown this question wide out to the company. The next thing I might want to do is maybe just ask some people, who I work with regularly, what their thoughts are on this matter. So I've got an Office 365 group here for the engineering team. So I'm going to jump into the engineering team group. Here it is. I'm just accessing it here. And I'm going to ask the question here as well. So my first question, hey guys, I asked on Yammer a question. Anyone got more info? Because I know that these people here, are really sort of clever people. These are the guys who build the product. They may not be following Yammer, so I'm just going to ask the question here as well. Any more info on connections? And I'm really rubbish at typing when I'm on a screen or a webinar, but that's not a problem because my team will kind of know what it is, I want to do. The question
and Rich, you hit on a very important point, right? Like, some of you may be thinking, well, good for you, Dux and Rich, but not everybody in a company uses Yammer, only a handful of people. And that's exactly what Rich pointed out. And it's true with us. There may be folks in our organization, remember the generational preferences at work? Yammer may not be their thing. But email is definitely everybody's thing. And as you can see, this is email, but it's using groups, right? It's sending an email as if it was a distribution list, but really groups ties everything together. And if you look at this interface, notice above, this is a group, but you have a calendar for the group, a library for the group where it says files, notebook, and all that good stuff. So it's different options, different choices. So we're not saying that there's a perfect tool, because there never will be a perfect tool, but we have all these options and avenues and preferences of people.
Exactly. And typically, as Dux mentioned at the start of this webinar, people don't work in one team anymore. So whilst I might have started work by looking at whether I can help with this customer's inquiry, the next thing I want to do is I'm actually going to jump over to my OneDrive. One of the other projects that I'm working on is I'm putting together a demonstration for a new product launch that we've got coming up. And basically what I've been doing is I've been working on some documents in my OneDrive. I've been kind of drafting this document, but I now want to move it to a sort of team collaboration area. And this is something they introduced to OneDrive pretty recently, and one of my favorite features. And this really helps us kind of understand about how everything ties together. So I want to take this file and I want to copy it into the files of one of these Office 365 groups. So I haven't left OneDrive. I want to put this in the product launch group. I just hit just here. So I'm going to take that file and copy it over. I'm going to put it straight in just there now. Done. So again, as Dux was talking at the start about the whole frictionless and about the way of making it really easy for people to communicate together, I've really simply moved that document over into a group to carry on the rest of my work. Top feature in OneDrive and something really handy that the team have put in recently. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to jump back to my OneDrive and I'm going to go into that group. So here it is, product launch event. I'm going to jump into there. And actually what I want to do is I suddenly think to myself, actually, I haven't replied to Deb's email. So remember at the start of this, I had an email from Deb. She said, we've got this customer. So actually, I just want to send her a quick message to say, hey, Deb, don't worry. It's all under control. I don't want to send her an email. I get on quite well with Deb. We have a really informal conversation. So I'm just going to jump into Skype. And I'm going to send her a message here instead. So I'll find Deb. Here she is. Deborah, that's the person that sent me it. Send her a quick message saying, hey, Deb, I sorted that out for you earlier on. So, oops, type. Apologies. Hey, Deb, all sorted. Thanks for your mail. And again, talking about working anywhere, I've not had to use the Skype for Business client. I've not had to use the application on my desktop. I can just use Skype all here through within the browser, which is a really nice feature, something that I find pretty cool.
Yeah, Rich, for me, I use Teams for everything. Teams is my new Outlook, man. Like, I just keep Teams up, and yeah, I do my chats there. I keep up with the rest of the team there, so it's all good.
Yeah, cool. So final thing here, I just want to jump across to Planner. For those of you who haven't seen Planner, Dux, he started off a lot of his SharePoint work talking about SharePoint for project management. And, Dux can talk about SharePoint for project management, and give you some great ideas kind of all day long. Project Online, Project Server, fantastic tool. But a lot of the time, I need to think a bit more lightweight. And this is where Planner comes in fantastically. So here we are. This is the planner for the product launch event. This is a task that I'm working on. So I just want to give people a quick update. So all good, guys. Draft 1 will be done on Tuesday. Tuesday. So I just update it. It's really simple. It's done. And then if I want to move that into On Track, I can just drag it across and drop it over to On Track just here. So, you know, it's just really simple for me to go ahead and use. Sorry, Dex.
Yeah, no worries. The one thing really cool about Planner is they have iOS apps as well. So as you know, Microsoft is investing a lot in mobile. So a lot of these technologies, they have their specific apps on Android, iOS, but Planner specifically, the iOS app was recently released, and it's really good. In addition, Planner now works with Flow. So imagine all the different things you could do now with Flow. There's Flow templates for Planner, which allows you essentially to interact with other workloads, not just Planner. So maybe, I don't know, you can say if a document comes in that's related to this project, go to Planner and update the task, right? So you could do cool stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So I think what we've tried to show in that demonstration there that, you know, as Doug said, there isn't one tool for the job. You know, I've shown my day in the life there. I've used email. I've jumped across to Yammer. I've been in Office 365 group. I was in OneDrive, but from OneDrive, I seamlessly copied a mail over to a group I was working with, and then I've updated my tasks within Planner. So, you know, I've jumped around throughout the day, but the most important thing, as we said back, it's all tied to the business scenarios. The reason I've done this is because this is helping me get my job done quicker and getting me home at 5 o'clock, as Dex mentioned.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I don't know about going home. Maybe go to the pub, right? But anyway, so again, if we map Rich's journey, right, it cuts across different tools. Now, Dux, I mean, come on. Realistically, I can't do every single business scenario for every single business unit. But here's the most important part. If you start showing and guiding your business users in this fashion, what you're doing is you're training them to think this way. And yeah, by thinking this way, obviously they'll learn all the bells and whistles of all the tools, but at the very least, they won't get lost in the shuffle of, oh, let me go to Planner, let me click, let me figure out all these things, and then what, right? So obviously, from the get-go, you still need to provide them high-level understanding and training about the technology, but the way they approach the technology should come from their business perspective. And in that way, you know, you're shifting the thinking less about the tool, but more about achieving their business goal. Now, is the slide moving, Rich?
Yep, looks good.
You mind moving?
No, you're there.
Okay. So the next section, right? So we talked about, one, identify the business scenario. So the next section that you have to consider is another way to look at what to use when is identify the collaboration factor. So we talk about business scenario, that's one angle. The other angle is think about your collaboration factors. Now, what are these factors? Factor number one. So if we look at different factors, the first factor is audience. With whom do you need to communicate? Now, a little disclaimer, right? These are just guidance that personally and what we've seen in the industry, we work with the customers, we found this very relevant. We're not saying you have to follow this, but this is what we found effective. Who do you want to communicate with? Yammer and Skype Broadcast works really well for organization-wide communication. SharePoint groups, Planner teams, as you saw in the demo, are beneficial for team-based project collaboration. And Outlook, which is email, and Skype are ideal for one-to-one conversation. Now, factor number two, if we think about it, is really from a perspective of how sensitive it is from a time, how urgent it is, how quickly do you need to communicate. Teams and Skype are ideal for high-tempo, fast-paced communication and collaboration. So let me kind of talk about Teams here. So I know Teams is rather new. The way Microsoft described it is a chat-based workspace. You know, the example I tell customers is when you think about Teams, is scenarios that a group of people need to work together, not just from a communication perspective, but collaboration as well in a high-velocity, fast-paced manner. So a good example would be like the stock market, right? So let's say you work in the stock market, you're collaborating with a bunch of traders, and as you may know, time is of essence when you want to buy, when you want to sell. Imagine if you're a bunch of traders, you're across different markets, And then just by using Teams, you can say, okay, buy this stock, sell this stock. Hey, I saw this article about this company, why we should buy in. Hey, check out this chart, right? So that high velocity, fast pace of interaction, today, before Teams, people would do it in email, Skype. It's just all disconnected. With Teams, it allows you to do that. Another example, maybe you're in a development team and you're doing a release of a software. Maybe you're doing sprints, or you subscribe to the Agile or Kanban methodology where everything's happening in a fast cycle. Teams is another great scenario. Another good scenario, and I want to share an example here in our company. So in my team that I work with, I have a global team. So internally, I encourage all the internal group-based communication using Teams, because when my colleagues on the other side of the world wakes up, they can just look at Teams and look at the thread of what happened that day. So that's where Teams is very powerful. It brings you obviously the instant messaging capability, the Skype capability. You can do video, you can do audio, you can integrate with other technologies with the connectors they have. You can build bots. So Teams is awesome. I really encourage you guys to try it out. SharePoint Planner, Groups, Outlook supports low-tempo asynchronous scenarios, and then Yammer can work for any tempo. Factor number 3, we talked about the audience, the sensitivity, and we can also look at collaboration tone, right? How do you express yourself? Remember earlier we looked at the generational preferences. Outlook and SharePoint are common tools for formal communications and collaboration. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you cannot use Outlook for informal. I know myself included, I would send very informal emails for internal team members. But traditionally, Outlook is used for more formal type of communication. Yammer, Planner, Groups, Teams supports informal. And again, Yammer also supports formal. But these are some of the observations I have with how we use it and with how our customers are using it as well. Skype can support both formal and informal communications and collaboration. Lastly, and this goes back to the culture of the company, like organizational roles, right? That's a 4th factor. Who are you in the organization? Now, I put here, pick your battles. What does that mean? At the end of the day, you can't force people. I mean, you provide guidance. You provide a lot of great scenarios. One thing for sure, Outlook is the de facto tool for senior leaders and executive leaders. Not that they don't want to use new tools, but almost always your senior leadership is on the go. They're on their phone, so they're going to use their phone. And Outlook is the tried and true, or emails a tried and true technology that works. And most likely your executive leadership will be reliant on email. All the other collaboration tools enables everyone else in the organization. And organizational roles dictate how they want to collaborate. And most likely your senior leadership and executive are not deeply engaged in a lot of, the details of projects, for example. So a lot of senior leadership and executives mostly are more broadcast one way or one-to-one. But yeah, these are just some common observations. The good news is Office 365 provides all these tools depending on the roles. Rich, well, what are your observations around customers you work with around these different factors?
Yeah, I agree, and I think the one thing I would say is that picking your battles is certainly important, but I would also say maybe don't be surprised when you make an assumption it turns out maybe not to be the case. So I remember I was rolling out an Office 365 pilot for a large motor retail organization in the UK. Oops, we've gone forward there. Let me just go back. And we rolled out Outlook Online, and they were using it. And then the IT director comes up to me and goes, "Hey, Rich, I've created these group things." And this was when groups had only just come out. It looks really cool. You didn't tell me about this. And I maybe decided, hey, he's more senior in the organization. He's the IT director. He's not going to be interested in some of these new technologies. So I think the only thing I would say is that I agree with all of these factors, but be prepared to be surprised. That would be my point that I put in. So, just because you think someone won't want to use that tool, maybe they will. And equally, just because you
100%.
assume, yeah. So be prepared to be surprised would be my summary.
You're right. And it goes back to, we can't just stereotype people, but also be prepared that you can go to the other end too and force people, because if you do that, then from the get-go, they'll have this negative impression, which may lead them not to take advantage of these technologies sooner.
Absolutely.
Now, we've kind of summed it up in this little chart, right? And really the idea here is, looking at some of the common factors, the time sensitivity, collaboration tones, and audience, where, if it's individual and urgent, Skype for Business call or IM, right? If it's a whole company, and if it's informal, you can use Yammer, right? So this kind of gives you a good little guide on how to think about which tool to use when based on different collaboration factors. Now, we've got tons of different resources we'd love to share. So, again, I talked about scenarios. Microsoft has Fast Track Productivity Library that can help you think through and how to put together these scenarios. Resources from AppPoint. We have tons of great resources around what to use when, past webinars. We've got infographic as well. And also, I encourage everybody to join the Microsoft Tech community. A lot of great conversations with customers on how to facilitate sustainable adoption and ensure that these wonderful technologies are being taken advantage of in your company. Another set of resources for you. We've got this playbook, infographic that you see, which is very, very helpful. If you want to get a copy of this, soon after this webinar, you'll get a link to the resources, the video, and the infographic as well. Now, I know we have some time left. Again, first and foremost, before I jump on and answer some of these questions, what do you guys think? If you can just pop in the chat room, let us know, is this beneficial, helpful? That would help us a lot, especially as we help present more of these. But as you do that, let's jump in and look at some of the questions. Rich, do you see any of the questions?
Got the questions. I'm just going to go through. So, I think, there was a question kind of early on, which option is best when you have to communicate with external users, groups, teams, or Yammer? So obviously external users is bringing another one of those factors in. But I think what I would say is, let's think about the audience. Is this one external user? Is this all your customers you're communicating with externally? What is it you're communicating? If you're sharing a contract with someone external, an external Yammer group is probably not the way to do it. And again, speed. So again, looking at the infographic around audience, tone, and speed, I would ask the question of, what is it we're communicating externally? Who is the audience? What's the tone and what's the speed? And hopefully this graphic will help you pick something. But yeah, that's a great question, Sanjay. So let me see what else we've got in here. Dux, if you want to pick any of the questions out, feel free as well.
Yeah, forgive me. I'm trying to figure out how to get to the question box.
Oh, okay.
Do I go to...
No worries. If you can't get it, I've got it. I'll pick some of the questions out, Dux, and throw them at you, and maybe you can answer them. How about that?
Okay.
So yeah, loads of questions if the slides are going to be available. So yeah, absolutely, as we mentioned, we're going to share that with you. Are the days of long-term team sites gone? That's an interesting question from Kenneth. I don't know if Dux, if you want to give your opinion on...
Yeah. So I would say no, the days are not gone. I mean, look at the announcement last week. They're going to release a communication site, which is great. The way I think of long-term team sites is that the way I think about like permanent departments, right? So, your departments will always be there, HR, IT, accounting. And I think having that hub where your day-to-day work happens, your day-to-day collaboration happens, that's where the team site would be great for. So to answer your question, I don't think it's going away. I think with the recent improvements in SharePoint Online, it'll just make it better. But think of those as used by formal departments in permanent teams. So when I say permanent, again, departments, not project teams, nothing temporary.
Yeah. There's an interesting question here, actually, from Steve that says, what Steve's actually saying is, do we think the approach for when to use what is different when users have already started using the service, maybe compared to an organization starting from scratch? So I think that's a real interesting one. If someone's already using this, do they do it in a different way? Dux, maybe I'll give my view, and then you can share some of your thoughts on that afterwards. So a really interesting one there is, again, I was with a customer the other day. We were actually talking about additional backup for Office 365. That's one of the products that AppPoint offer. And we were discussing, hey, so, where are you with Office 365? What is it you've rolled out? What is it you've used so far? And the IT director goes, yeah, we pretty much just rolled out email. But because, in email there's this thing for groups, and I keep mentioning it. It's like, hey, do you want to create a group? It's just on the left-hand side. I noticed that my organization have created 590 groups. This organization had a few thousand employees. 590 groups in a few weeks, never been rolled out to the business, never been thought about, and how that was going to work. So that's an organization that groups have gone down well. So what I would say is, when you're considering, this, what to use, where there might be one or two options, if something's already working, don't try and change people from that. If you're starting from scratch, you've got a bit more flexibility. That would be my thoughts. I don't know if you want to add anything onto that, Dux.
No, I fully agree. So I love the question, all right? And I would say, yeah, the answer is yes. But generally, though, if you like you said, Rich, people will be surprised, right? So I'm working with this engineering organization, like they build machineries, and a lot of their employees are, I would say, baby boomers. They're used to email, and boy, when Yammer was released and talking about the value of Yammer, it wasn't just, hey, here's Yammer, have a good life. But the point is, a lot of these engineers, they're around the world, and they want to share how they do things, and they found Yammer to be easier and quicker to share information. They shifted, right? So to answer that question, would it be different? I would say it's yes, but don't let that culture, if you may, or that stereotype we have, stop you from introducing maybe better methods and better means, right? So for me, I always start with this when I talk to customers. Now, if they say, well, we're already doing this and it's a cultural thing, then yeah, be flexible and shift how you present and pitch this. But you can use this as a starting point for conversations.
Yeah, and we're running short of time, and there's a lot of questions here. But there's one that I'm going to pick out of the mix there, and this is from Tom. And Tom says, our users have really taken to Yammer, which is obviously fantastic. Do we think it will fade out as groups and teams become more prevalent? Really interesting topic, something that kind of has been suggested by lots of people. And Dux, I don't know, maybe with your chat with Dan and obviously some of the announcements last week, and there were some announcements around Yammer, if you want to give your view on kind of the future of Yammer, sure. And will it be replaced?
So this is my opinion, right? And my opinion is no. I think Yammer will stay around. And why do I say this? There's continued investments in Yammer. So I don't know recently if you saw the announcement with the integration or new features around connectors in Yammers. And the fact that there's continued investment in Yammer, and I know a lot of the Yammer product team, engineering team, and what's coming in the roadmap, which is obviously better integration and again, streamlining a lot of the different workloads. I think Yammer will be here for a good period of time. So if your organization uses it, takes advantage of it, and gets value out of it, I say continue to use it. I mean, again, we here internally at AvePoint, we take advantage of that day in, day out.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. So I'm conscious of time. There's loads of questions. I'm going to pick one more question out because I think it's a really interesting one. And someone's put, we're using SharePoint and our staff wants one location to work from. Can I add all of these tools as web parts so they can access it from within their team site? I think that's a great question. I think when Office 365 groups came out as a concept, I think the friction between moving from tool 1 to tool 2 to tool 3 maybe wasn't as optimal as it could have been. But I think Microsoft have done some super work on that recently, and we've seen a lot of different things change. I mean, if you take Microsoft Teams, for example, we haven't shown the UI today. Across the top of Teams, I've got different tabs for kind of different things. So from within my team, I can, I have a team that I work with. I've got one tab, which is my Power BI dashboard of what's going on. Another tab takes me into Planner. Another tab takes me into my files, which are stored in SharePoint. So what I would say is that I think there's probably still work to do in that, but I think Microsoft have heard the message, and I'd say it's probably getting better on all the time. And I think, people want, even if it's not one place to work, they at least want one place that easily connects to every other place would be my summary at that point.
Yeah, you know what, Rich? I mean, we've got all these wonderful questions. Why don't we do this, right? Obviously, we'll provide all these videos and links and resources to everybody. Probably what we could do, we take all these questions and we'll write up a nice blog post and share it as well. What do you think?
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, there's loads of fantastic questions we don't have time to answer. So yeah, good thing. We'll get them up. We'll get a blog out as soon as possible, guys.
All right, gang. Again, thank you everybody for joining us, and feel free to hit me up, Meet Dux, and then Rich is on Twitter as well. We appreciate your time, and hopefully you found this session very beneficial. Thanks again, and have a fantastic rest of the afternoon.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Thanks very much.